Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 28, 2022 regular meeting of the Gladstone City Council and call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, all the members of the City Council are present and we have a quorum. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Present arms. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item up this evening is the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. We have a relatively short agenda tonight with one public hearing and an ordinance. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda for tonight? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We'll move on to item 5. Approval of the minutes from the November 14th, 2022 closed City Council meeting.
Mayor Garner.
Councilman Mallon.
I move to approve minutes from the November 14th, 2022 closed City Council meeting minutes.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the November 14th, 2022 closed City Council meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Minutes are hereby approved. Item number 6 is approval of the minutes from the November 14th, 2022 regular City Council meeting.
Mayor Garnis.
Councilman Mallons.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the November 14th, 2022 regular City Council meeting.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the November 14th, 2022 regular City Council meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Minutes are hereby approved. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, communications from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address City Council on a matter that is not on this evening's agenda? If not, we'll move on to communications from City Council. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Mayor on a very nicely and well done Mayor's Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And also Harvest Bank for refreshments and Security Bank for indoor refreshments. But Mayor, you did a very nice job that evening and made the city proud. I understand the city manager is in charge of the weather on such occasions, which was beautiful, and I really feel sorry for the next guy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Spallo.
No comments this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Mallons.
Mayor, I'd like to extend a happy birthday to Council Member Smith.
That's right. Thank you, sir.
Very nice.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have to do one of those songs or like at Applebee's and clap. Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I will add my thanks to you for a great Mayor's Christmas tree. It was a great weather night, whomever was in charge. And I also wanted to say thanks to Justin Murky and his team for coordinating beautiful Linden Square and making all the arrangements for that night. I also wanted to just give a shout out for the Gladstone magazine that had just arrived in everyone's mailboxes. So it's a good magazine. I haven't had the chance to get through the whole thing, but it looks great, and I always appreciate that, and I know our residents do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to obviously thank city staff for all the hard work they do. There's an amazing amount of coordination and work that goes into the evening that is the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting ceremony, getting the tree up, the lights, the coordinating the groups and the choirs. It's a huge effort. Special thanks to Director Murky and all of the Parks and Rec staff for their work coordinating the event, Joe Loria for hosting, and the choirs from Antioch Middle and Chapel Hill Elementary was great. I understand the fundraising is going well, so we'll look forward to seeing the totals, I think, usually in January. And distributing the money between our three charities, Feed Northland Kids, the Gladstone Neighbors Helping Neighbors program, and the Gladstone Animal Shelter. With that, we'll move on to item 9, communications from City Manager. Mr. Wiglerson, anything new in your life?
Thank you, Mayor. But the candidate filing opens on December 6th at 8 a.m. For 2 seats on the City Council. Holidays on the farm starts on December 10th, and the always popular Santa Claus calls or letters is accepting requests. So if you know a little one, get your form in by December 10th and receive a call or letter from Santa Claus. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on with item 10, the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, will you please explain and read the consent agenda?
A consent agenda allows the City Council to consider and approve routine items of business without discussion. Any member of the City Council, the City staff, or the public may request removal of any item from the consent agenda and request that it be considered under the regular agenda if discussion or debate of the item is desired. Items not removed from the consent agenda will stand approved upon motion by any council member, second and unanimous vote to approve the consent agenda as published or modified. Consent agenda. Consider special event permits. Good Shepherd Church is hosting disc golf tournament Sunday, December 4th, 2022, 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., Hobby Hill Park. Ducks Flying Disc, Kansas City, Professional Disc Golf Association, PDGA, charity to benefit Northland Animal Welfare Society, NAWS, Saturday, January 7th, 2023, 8 o'clock a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., Hobby Hill Park. Resolution R-22-60, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services contract with Cook, Flatt, and Strobel Engineers, Incorporated, in the amount not to exceed $60,000 for the design of the Linden Connector Trail Project TP2373. Resolution R-22-61, a resolution authorizing acceptance of a proposal from Mid-America Pump in the total amount not to exceed $26,668.17 to replace the motor on high service pump number 3 at the water treatment plant, project WP2390. Resolution R-22-62, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Buscom Incorporated for the purchase of additional recording ports and channels to expand the digital recording system in the Emergency Services Dispatch Center in the amount of $36,727.50. Consider financial report month end October 2022.
Thank you. Does any member of the audience request the removal of any item from the consent agenda for discussion? City Council? Mr. City Manager?
No, sir.
Is there a motion?
Mayor Garnes,
Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
I move to approve the consent agenda as published.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as listed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We'll move on with our regular agenda. Item 11, public hearing on amending Chapter 105, Animal Regulations in Title II, Public Health, Safety, and Welfare in the Gladstone City Code relating to residential hens and bees. The public hearing is open. During the public hearing, we will hear first from city staff, followed by those in favor of the proposed amendments, and then by those opposed. We'll start with the staff presentation. Mr. Greer.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Over the past couple of years, city staff has been contacted by residents who have a desire to keep hens and bees on their residential property. These individuals who have inquired about keeping hens and bees typically live in a neighborhood on a quarter or half-acre lot. Public interest on this topic was also expressed during the citizen-based strategic planning process called Gladstone, Shaping Our Future. Currently, the City of Gladstone's codes and ordinances in relation to this topic are a bit confusing for residents, city staff, and clarity on the topics would be super beneficial to all parties. The draft ordinance before you tonight have been vetted by other members of city staff and the Planning Commission. This project was discussed in an open study session with the Planning Commission in September earlier this year, and approval was recommended by the Planning Commission on November 7th. 7 planning commissioners voted in favor, and 2 planning commissioners voted against the proposed ordinance. In summary, the draft ordinance presented resembles the ordinance that the City of Liberty, Missouri passed a few years ago. On the screen, you will see some key highlights from the proposed ordinance. In relation to hens, if you live on a property up to 3 acres, you can have 6 hens maximum. If you live on 3 acres or more, you would be allowed to have 10 hens maximum. We are proposing a one-time permit fee of $20. Coops and runs shall be at least 10 feet from any property line and at least 50 feet from any residential structure, deck, or porch that is not owned by the applicant. Private restrictions, such as an HOA, shall supersede city regulation, and enforcement will be a combination between animal control and code enforcement. In relation to bees, if you live on a property that is up to 3 acres, you can have 1 beehive maximum. If you live on a property that is 3 acres or more, you can have 2 beehives maximum. A one-time permit fee proposing of $20. All hives must be at least 10 feet from any property line and at least 50 feet from any residential structure, deck, or porch that is not owned by the applicant. Hives shall not be located within 50 feet of a pre-existing swimming pool or pre-existing kenneled animal. A supply of fresh water shall be maintained in a location readily accessible to the hive of the site throughout the day to prevent bees from congregating at neighboring swimming pools or other sources of water on nearby properties. Private restrictions such as an HOA shall supersede city regulation, and enforcement will also be a combination between animal control and code enforcement. On the next slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the changes that were discussed from the Planning Commission and city staff in September and November. Change the amount of allowed hens for 3 acres or less to be 6 hens. I believe we started out with 2 or 3 when the conversation first started. And if you have up to 3 acres, you can have 10 hens. A one-time permit fee of $20 was settled on at the Planning Commission, and it's very similar to the current dog permit. And then a maximum height of the coop shall be 8 feet. And then the coop and run may not exceed 80 square feet for 6 hens and not more than 100 square feet for 10 hens. City staff's interpretation of the existing code actually makes having fowl illegal if the property is under 3 acres. The draft ordinance before you tonight provides a legal way for individuals to keep hens if they live on a property that is 3 acres or less. Also located at each of your seats this evening are a few emails that Chris Keller, the city clerk, and I received today from individuals voicing their opinion on the proposed ordinance this evening. Thank you, and I'll do my best to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions for city staff? Mr. Greer, I just had one question. I know Mayor Pro Tem, you were at the Planning Commission meeting. Having read the minutes, it appeared to be a spirited discussion. A lot of times when things come to us, they're rarely a split vote when they're coming to us from planning. I was wondering if there was anything you could share about what some of the issues that were maybe raised at planning.
That's actually a tough question for me to answer. I don't want to put words in the mouth of some of the planning commissioners that voted no that night. From what I remember, they didn't explicitly say why they were saying no. I believe, this is just me speaking out loud, and what I interpreted is that, you know, if we're trying to revitalize some of the neighborhoods throughout the community, this may be something that is backwards. And that's my interpretation of that. If that's wrong, I apologize. But
Thank you. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mayor Pro Tem?
It was a good discussion. I was going to say that. The planning commissioners engaged quite a bit. They asked good questions. They talked among themselves. I think an issue of waste came up, an issue of the idea of one commissioner, I think, used the word, he didn't think that we should try to be engaging urban farmers in the city of Gladstone. That came up. But it was not, the discussion was good and sound, and I think everybody had their piece. And
policy driven.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
thank you for the help with that.
Thank you. Any other questions for city staff? Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Is there anyone here who would like to address City Council in favor of the proposed amendments related to residential hens and bees? And if so, would you please step up to the microphone, give us your name and address for the record, and we're interested.
Good evening. My name is Cody McElroy. I live 4 Northwest 72nd Street, Apartment D. I am completely in support of expanding hens and bees. I think that will allow people to kind of get more roots, and of course with the cost of eggs, I think it's very important. Now I do raise an issue. I did raise chickens when I lived up and out in the country. If a significant number of people do get chickens, what is going to be our goal and plans to deal with the waste, because that can damage the water, and it can be very negative to your face. So I just don't know if that was kind of dealt, because I know large amounts of chicken waste can be very toxic. So I don't know if there's a large demand for it or if it's just something that's not a non-issue. But I am fully supportive of it, because I once I get a house, I plan on getting chickens. So.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council in favor of the amendments regarding hens and chickens? Please, please, come on up. Okay, sorry.
My name is Mike Selesky. I live at 6223 Indiana Avenue. We actually have chickens. I violated the ordinance not knowing, just because our boundaries and what came up on it. As far as the waste goes, you know, since Cody just spoke about that, we compost it. You can break it down. You can use it in your gardens. There's potassium, there's nitrogen. It's like one of the best things for fertilizers for your property. You know, and then when you talk about the water supply, it also, if you're able to let your chickens out for a short amount of time, they can do a lot of like pest control on your property, where you have to use a lot less chemicals to treat your yard to do stuff, where that could then turn run off into the system and with the water. The big reason we ended up doing is we have a little girl, and she had failure to thrive. She had a lot of food allergies. Store-bought eggs, things like that didn't work for her. She was like basically limited for about, well, like the 8 different foods she could eat. By being able to have these chickens, control what goes into these chickens, it's just an extra source of protein that she has that helps her continue to grow, get bigger, stronger, all those things. You know, we've had these chickens, and none of our neighbors even knew they were there. They're pretty quiet the whole time. You know, every once in a while you might get one that makes a little bit of noise when it's laying an egg, but it's for a few minutes and it passes. But, you know, I just like to ask, you know, to really consider this, because the cost of stuff going up, but it's also the personal thing too, because like our kids love these chickens. They're like pets. They come out, our kids spend time with them. It also teaches, like, you know, how to responsibly raise animals, how to, you know, from, I guess, farm to table. You know, they're learning the whole process of it, what goes into it, how to care for them. So I just appreciate your time listening tonight, and hope you guys consider this.
Thank you. If I could ask you a question, is there anything in the proposed regulations that would conflict with like what you're trying to do right now?
You know, my biggest thing is when I look at the numbers, because I know people that raise chickens out in Kearney, different areas like that, like the size of the coops. You know, I mean, I think it's like, you know, it's like any kind of animal. If you have them outside caged all the time, you can say we have a dog run out there, but if you never let that dog get any kind of exercise, it's going to become overweight. It's not going to thrive the way it should. So I think if we had something where chickens were allowed like X amount of time, as long as it's like somebody's watching them, just to make sure nothing goes wrong, you know. But they're smart. They know, like ours, they know like when the sun goes down, they're all inside the coop. When the sun's up, they come outside, they start moving around a little bit. The size of the coops, like, you know, with an 80 square foot coop for 6 hens, more or less what chickens require is between 2 to 3 square foot per chicken to survive in a coop. You know, with the big businesses like Tyson, those guys, they'll say it's like 1 foot, so it's not humane the way they do it. With, you know, an 80 square foot coop, you could have easily, you know, 10 chickens in there with plenty of room for them to thrive and continue to grow. So that'd be the one area that, you know, maybe I'd see things a little different. I know like Kansas City, like I said, where we ran into trouble was we were following the Kansas City guidelines, because where we back up, this looks more along the lines maybe like the Liberty type guideline. But I work for Feldman's out in Liberty, and almost everybody in Liberty still has 15 chickens, you know. I agree with not having the roosters, just because you don't want the noise. You don't want the complaints coming from the neighbors, things like that. The only other one I'm not 100% sure on, and because I'm super, this is why I really want this to pass, is I don't believe in raising meat birds in town, though. I don't think we should be calling chickens in town. That'd be the one area where I say, like, we have to be careful on how we're doing it just because of mess, waste, stuff like that, But as far as waste on chickens, I mean, with our chickens, they really don't make any more mess than the dogs. And like I said, you're able to compost it, you're able to break it down and use it, and as long as you're responsible in what you do, there shouldn't be an issue with it.
Appreciate that.
I know your daughter mentioned to me at the planning commission meeting that she has all these chickens named.
Yeah, they do. Yes, they're named, and I mean, even like our littlest one who's 4, she goes out there, she got a chicken named Pickle, and when Pickle sees her, Pickle comes running and get picked up and held. So they're more than just egg layers. They're pets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address City Council in favor of the amendments?
Evening, my name is Danny Fowler, 6917 North Troost Avenue. I've been a Gladstone resident for about 16 years, give or take. I was trying to do the math over there for a second. I couldn't quite remember. I am very much in favor of an ordinance that codifies how we can have chickens in the city of Gladstone and do it within the bounds of the law. I will say that as the ordinance sits, I can definitely see some flaws. I'll echo the size of the flock and perhaps even the size of the coop itself might be a little on the small side, but that also might be fine for a slightly larger flock. The one thing that I do have a little bit of concern about is, like he said, if they're cooped up, that's where that comes from. If they're cooped up, that is not the best way to take care of the chickens. And like he said, they're pets. They're not just farm birds. So having the best welfare for the chickens, having them have the ability to have some free range ability is in their benefit. And in most cases that I've observed with small chicken owners in urban environments like this, it's not really a situation where you have even the problem like a dog gets out. Chickens, they come home to roost. They're going to come back to the coop. That's just their natural instinct to do so. Like I said, I think there are some flaws with it, but I'm in favor of us getting something on the books so that we then can work on the flaws. So we can get something, we can make changes to a law. It's not set in stone. The last thing I'll say in regards to waste as a problem, it's not really a problem. Like you said, there's not that much waste that's created. It can be composted. You usually have to put it in a compost pile. You wait a year, and the next year, that's for your garden. So this idea about not encouraging urban farmers, how many people have a vegetable farm in their backyard? Urban farming is not just about chickens, but chickens could be a key component in doing that responsibly. So,
appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to address City Council in favor of the proposed amendments? If not, we'll move on. Is there anyone who'd like to address City Council in opposition to the proposed amendments related to residential hens and bees, please? And if you can give us your name and address just for the record, thank you.
My name's Kami Maxey, and I live at 205 Northwest 67th Street. I've lived in Gladstone for about 22 years. I am also in favor of clarifying and creating rules that govern chicken keeping within Gladstone, and I'm pleased that the council is addressing that. And like Mike, I also already own chickens and ducks because we did our research and we read the laws, but we only found laws addressing wildfowl, and we only own domesticated fowl within our property, and so we felt like we were within the laws when we began keeping chickens and ducks almost a decade ago here in Gladstone. One of the most impactful things for me that I learned during the pandemic was how very fragile our food supply chain is. I saw how quickly shelves in a grocery store became empty aisles. I I felt what it felt like to drive to 3 different grocery stores and see that the food I needed wasn't there. And it really helped me understand the importance of urban farming, of being able to have my own garden or my own eggs or something to supplement in times of crisis, whether that crisis is weather-driven or pandemic-driven or any other situation. It taught me the value of buying local, of supporting local farmers, of growing my own. I have so much gratitude for our family's efforts towards earth-friendly, sustainable practices like gardening and keeping chickens. And to me, gardening and keeping chickens just go hand in hand. I can't imagine doing either one without the other. Our chickens are so integral to our gardening. We use all of their manure to create our fertilizer for the garden. We let our chickens into the garden in the fall to turn our dirt and help composted leaves and manure turn into that fertile soil that grows our vegetables the next season. We let our chickens out to roam in between our gardens and eat all of the pests that we would otherwise be spraying with pesticides and contributing pesticides to our waterways. The chickens and the ducks, they run around and they're so cute to watch. But when they're doing it, they're eating fleas and oak mites that make being outside hard for our dog and for us. And they're eating Japanese beetles when every other gardener I know is complaining about Japanese beetles destroying their garden. I found 2 Japanese beetles in my garden this year because chickens love Japanese beetles. They also love tomato hornworms, which I don't struggle with, and so many gardeners do, because my chickens are out managing. They're part of the food chain. They're part of that cycle, and they're doing their part. They eat our food scraps. I collect waste from several other Gladstone residents as well, food scraps and what would otherwise be kitchen waste that goes into the landfill goes to our chickens, and those bugs and that food waste gives our chickens variety in their diet and healthier eggs, and then in turn my family is eating healthier eggs. My friends and neighbors that we share our eggs with are eating healthier eggs. I feel like owning chickens and having those chickens be part of my gardening and part of my yard is really important. I can't imagine requiring my chickens to stay in one tiny 8x10 area in my yard. I can't imagine them never getting to actually run and watch their little bodies wiggle when they run. I can't imagine how much more work it would be for me to move that manure, that waste that is probably the biggest concern, from that coop to my garden and to till it all in myself, when my chickens are willing to do that themselves. They'll run around the yard and distribute it. We've never, ever had an issue with smell from our coop because our chickens distribute that all around the yard on their own. But I'm worried that if all of the residents of Gladstone that have chickens have to keep their chickens in that one confined little space, all of their poop is in that one confined little space. And then we're creating the smells that we don't want wafting into our neighbor's barbecue or playing at the park. So I absolutely support us creating rules to govern chicken keeping. I feel like these rules are so restrictive that it would make it hard to manage a flock. Chicken flocks ebb and flow. When you introduce chicks, you have to introduce more than one at a time. To introduce chicks to a flock that can't be more than 6, you'd have to have only 3 laying hens to even introduce a group of 3 more chicks, which means I would have to have only 3 hens for a period of time, and then only 3 laying hens for another period of time after that. Kansas City, Missouri's restrictions, which allow 15 hens, also specify whether or not chicks are counted in that number, because when you buy chicks or hatch eggs, you have to hatch more than the number you want to end up with, because some of them aren't going to hatch, and some of them aren't going to survive, and some of them are going to be roosters, and I'm not going to keep them. So I would have to own more than 3 eggs or 3 chicks if I was planning to integrate 3 chicks into my flock that has finally dwindled down to 3 hens for me to be able to even introduce more birds to my flock. The restriction of 6 makes managing that ebb and flow very difficult. Limiting ducks makes it hard to have fertile eggs because I can't have a rooster. I don't want my My neighbor's concerned that my rooster is crowing, but I can have a drake without making sound, without crowing, and that drake helps protect my flock, and it produces fertile eggs so that my kids can do science lessons with hatching eggs so that they can incubate and watch those little chicks hatch, or so that I can create another duck for my own flock. But all of that is not an option with chickens and is with ducks. In summary, I absolutely support us creating requirements, but I feel like these requirements are much too unmanageable. I feel like they are moving Gladstone away from sustainable, earth-friendly, organic practices the way minimally restrictive laws could help Gladstone in those areas. I also feel like if Gladstone's focus is to be more welcoming and inviting to the community and to have a more variety within our community, that we need to make sure that chicken keeping isn't nearly impossible, or that if I keep my chickens so that I have eggs that I eat that I know come from birds that aren't cooped in a small cage all the time, that get to run free. I can't do that in Gladstone, because even keeping chickens in Gladstone with this proposal would require that my eggs are cooped in a cage, or my chickens are cooped up all of the time in a cage, never roaming my yard or contributing to my garden.
Good comments, thank you. Are there any other comments in opposition to the amendments regarding residential hens and bees? If you could give us your name and address just for the record, thanks.
Yeah, my name's April Bevington. I live at 3213 Northeast 70th Terrace. I just wanted to kind of echo a lot of her comments. Like, I think it's a good idea to have something on record to allow residents to keep chickens, but I don't agree that we could pass something and then make it work. Like, you know, even from the people who are in favor, you've heard some concern. I feel like just make it right the first time. And it's better to be less restrictive initially, and then if concerns are raised, they can be addressed down the line. Whereas if you're just so restrictive off the bat, it makes it difficult for the people who are already keeping chickens, that now they have to reduce or change the way they're doing things. Like, it just doesn't really make sense to me. It seems a little backwards. And that's really all I had to say about that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address council?
My name is Selena Maxey, and I am on 205 Northwest 67th Street. I love chickens because they make great friends. They have their own personalities, and they're really friendly. And sometimes when I'm mad, I go and I talk to them. Their eggs are really better than store-bought eggs. I like to share eggs with my friends and my teacher. People are really excited when I give them eggs because people love fresh eggs. When I grow up, I want to be a chicken farmer. Farmers are important because without them, we wouldn't have any food to eat. I'm glad I've gotten to experience having chickens. I go to vocational school to take agriculture, but I wouldn't know that I wanted to be a farmer if I didn't get to have chickens and ducks. I learned a lot about incubating eggs and watching them hatch. I hope Gladstone doesn't limit hens to only 6 or tell people they can't have ducks, then I wouldn't get to keep my chickens and ducks, or get to incubate eggs or share eggs with my friends. I'm sad for other kids in Gladstone who wouldn't get to know that they wanted to be farmers or have chickens. I'm also sad for the chickens to be locked up in their run all the time. That's not very nice. And happy chickens lay better eggs.
Thank you. Good comments. Is there anyone else who would like to address council in opposition to the proposed regulations? Please.
Hi, I'm Amy Selesky, 6223 North Indiana Avenue. And not to go against my husband, Mike, he spoke in favor, and it's kind of hard to know whether to be in favor or to oppose this. So we agree with everybody else here that we really want an ordinance to pass, one that is clear-cut, black and white. The one currently is just so gray, and so while we really want that, the same thing, the restrictions are it's too restrictive on the number of chickens and being cooped up all the time. So I don't want to just say everything that everybody else has said, but just want to go on the record for that I know my husband feels the same way too, but that we desperately want chickens. We desperately want to keep them. 6 hens will not provide enough eggs for our family. They don't each lay an egg every day. So we have 5 kids, so there's 7 people total in our family. And if we have 6 hens, in the wintertime, we might get 1 or 2 eggs a day if we were lucky out of that many. Right now, like we said, Kansas City allowed up to 15, which is what I thought we were following. We're 1 street over from Kansas City, so when I looked up everything, that was the ordinance that I found. So we have 15, and we get maybe 3 to 4 eggs a day right now. And they each go through their molting, and then they slow down in the wintertime, and in the summertime they do pick up a little bit, and that's, I feel, when we can share more with our neighbors and our friends and even other people who have allergies to store-bought eggs. So 6 hens, although it may sound like a lot to some people when we're using them for, of course, pets, but eggs too, that isn't enough for our family. So I would like to see that number increased. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, please?
Not prepare a speech. So,
right.
I'm Jessica Lowe. I live at 7232 North Indiana Avenue. I do not have chickens yet, but I'm in the early stages of kind of exploring the option. Cammie is my chicken expert along with Selena. They have provided my family with eggs, and I'm one of the ones that love Selena's eggs. So my issue with it is also the number and the coop itself. The whole idea is for them to free range, be able to have my backyard. My backyard is enclosed. I wouldn't expect my neighbors to carry that burden, but my friend who lives a ways away, she had to coop her chickens, and they started pecking each other. They started harming each other. They didn't lay as many eggs. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration when these are pets. They're not farm animals. They are pets. They are pets that are providing for us, but they're pets. Take this last week alone into consideration. I don't know if you, with your Thanksgiving or whatever, we all have deviled eggs, right? I went to 6 different stores in the area. We had no eggs. There was no eggs. We sold out of eggs. I reached out to Cammie, so they also didn't have any because they slow down in the winter. I didn't know that because I'm learning. But this whole process, if we put a cap on it from the beginning, somebody like me that's learning, I'm going to struggle. I'm going to struggle to get it up and going. I have 4 children, 2 adults, 6 family members in my house. To get the whole process up and running with all the restrictions, I think that it's gonna prevent that. And and like they've said, you know, as long as, I'm not saying like let us have 100 chickens, but I mean, if we follow Kansas City's guidelines, and if we run into issues, if there's problems with it, okay, well then we tweak that then. You can't be so restrictive in the beginning where somebody, you know, can't even start the process. Does that make sense? Like I said, I didn't write out a whole thing, but that is and I just wanted to go on record that I support part of the ordinance, but there's also a big part that I'm like, that's not going to work. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Please.
Yeah, I'm new to this area. I just moved to Missouri during COVID, actually. I don't keep chickens, but probably never will. But I hear, like, a lot of this comparison to, like, Liberty's guidelines versus Kansas City's guidelines. Me, personally, I chose to live in Gladstone over Liberty because I wanted my kids to be in a good school area, but I didn't want to live in a place like Liberty. That's not what I want. And I definitely lean more towards, you know, less restrictive way of living, a little more like self-sufficiency community, but not in like a HOA caring kind of way. And I feel like if the HOAs can supersede the restrictions, then the people who want that can still have that. And the people who chose Gladstone because they wanted to be more of the Kansas City feel with a little more of the family area can also have that too. So I just want to throw that in there.
Good. Appreciate it. Any other comments?
Hi, my name's Don Seymour. I live at 203 Northwest 67th Street. I've lived in Gladstone for over 20 years on the east side. My wife and I, about 11 years ago, moved to the west side. I love it in Gladstone. This is off the cuff, by the way. I was kind of thrilled with listening to these comments, and I agree with the Maxis, with everybody here. We do need some rules. I think we need to get closer to the Kansas City, Missouri ways. But the one thing that Cammie didn't mention, or briefly mentioned, was what I've seen in Salina. I've known them for 11 years. They're my neighbors. They have excellent eggs and stuff. Salina has done a tremendous job of keeping the coop up and educating herself with the birds and stuff. And I've seen a growth in her education and her personality. She's gotten this confidence going on now. And I just believe in it. Every year we have a party. It's a graffiti wall party that I have a wall built between our properties, and we invite some kids over. And one of the coolest things that happens is when Salina will take the kids and she'll educate these, and she knows the name of every one of her chickens and hens and stuff and ducks and stuff. And it's so cool to watch her develop into a human, into an adult, and God bless, our chickens, our ducks, and let's make the rules that will apply and see the growth in young kids and stuff, and let us benefit. You're talking about fertilizer. The Maxie's gardens are just tremendously fertile. Cammie's probably known to have one of the biggest kale plants that have ever grown on the planet. And it has a lot to do with Salina's, chicken waste, So anyway, I applaud this. I hope we get down to something that really fit the urban farmer and people that might not have 3 acres, because I think it's important for all of us to keep it going. I love Gladstone. It rocks. Let's keep it going. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments in opposition to the amendments? Is there any other testimony from the, please, come on up.
Quite frank, my wife and daughter are pretty eloquent when it comes to what we do around the house. The chickens and the ducks were kind of something we started just because we wanted to kind of connect to what life should be like. World War II, we had the war gardens, connect back to where we come from. A common topic today is the chickens, in like this 1-by-1 cage that produce our meat, or the small, I can go on, but the point of it is, my family and a number of kids that have come to our house connect. It's great to have the codes, and I'm excited to have them. I'm not sure about the numbers. I'm not sure about the ducks. And honestly, Dinah, who probably hasn't spoken tonight, one of the things she encouraged me to do was put a swing in for our ducks and chickens. And I'm telling you what, I never thought that was a thing, but yes, chickens do swings. But yeah, it's the restrictions on size. The coop size and the runs are pretty restricted. To be frank with you, that's a big thing. It's not enough size. The stress, it causes disease. It causes them to be a little more violent towards each other, to peck on each other. That was probably two of the big things that was for me an issue. I don't mind a permit. I don't mind somebody coming out and checking out what we have on the house. I don't mind moving things away from the neighborhood, the park, the ponds, the houses. But the restriction on the numbers and the restriction on the sizes and keep them cooped up is kind of, well, for example, I'm allergic to mosquitoes. When I was a kid, man, I'd break out when I got hit with them. My family has farms, so in summer times I'd spend my time on the farms with my family. I never had a problem. Turns out ticks and mosquitoes. So yeah, those would be the issues I'd probably have the most with it. And like I said, some amazing people have said pretty much what we need to talk about tonight. But anyways, that's all.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Please.
Okay. I'm Dinah Wonderly. I live at 207 Northwest 67th Street, right close to them. My parents lived there for years, and then I moved in. I love their chickens. They give me eggs. Of course, that's a good reason. But they're cute. I don't understand the 6. I don't know where that came from, except Liberty maybe. So I think if it was a larger amount, again, to start with, it would be very difficult to have a nice little herd of chickens. It's not herd. A little group of chickens, and have to get rid of them because this suddenly came into place. So I would be all for some kind of ordinances, but not this restrictive, I suppose. And they are all over the backyard, and I love seeing them out there. They come to visit me because I give them treats. And they know I'm going to give them treats, so they show up at the fence, and it's a delight to have them. And I've never been bothered by any of their noise. It's delightful. So that's my story that I'm sticking to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other questions or comments for city staff or from council? Mayor Pro Tem Moore?
Yes. Austin, I know that we based this ordinance on liberties, and I know that we did go round and round at Planning Commission in terms of, I can't remember either where we started with the number of allowed chickens, but we went up to 6 or 10. And I know that was a consternation by some members on the Planning Commission that we were too restrictive at the beginning. So my question is, any thoughts about what, and this is more an audience question almost, is like, I know we have to put a restriction on it. We can't just say you can have 100 chickens in the city limits, but I don't know what is appropriate, and I understand exactly what they're saying about the keeping them in the coop, but the other piece of that is, it seems to me that if they are allowed to be out of the coop, we have to have the yard fenced. because then they're gonna be all over the neighborhood. So I don't know if the individuals who have spoken have fenced yards, but that to me would be something we would have to do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, I mean, and I was there at every planning commission meeting, but I do have some issues about if we're going to do this. I hate to pass this and then we have to come right back around and change it again. So I just wonder if we should, I don't know what that means in terms of our action or non-action tonight, but those aren't really questions, Austin, but sorry.
That's okay. I took some notes while everybody was talking, and I'm going to do my best to address them all, and maybe that will answer some of the questions that you guys have tonight. First off, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and actually participating in the process. I will be the first person to tell you that I am not an expert on bees and chickens. I actually know more about them than I ever thought I would. But again, thank you guys for coming tonight and being a part of this, because the only way things get better is if you guys participate. So thank you for that. I think many of the complaints and phone calls that the city has received over the years and call-outs by animal control has to do with roaming chickens. A lot of times city staff doesn't know when somebody actually has a chicken or coop, and unless a complaint is made, and then control officers go out there and chickens are roaming on somebody's property because they're not fenced in, right? And so when we were having these conversations amongst city staff, planning commission, I believe the idea of having someone install a fence came up. But the conversation turned into, well, that's a pretty big financial burden to put on somebody to install a fence all the way around their property, right? So we kind of threw that out the door and didn't talk about it again. So again, I will just say a lot of these come from complaints that we've received about roaming chickens. The other thing that I will say is that I don't doubt the dedication and passion that everybody in this room has tonight for their hens or bees, whatever the case may be. But I think the flip side of that conversation is there's a lot of irresponsible bees and chicken keepers throughout the city too. So, everybody in this room tonight is probably great at what they do. There are some other people throughout the city that are not great at what they do. When we came to the conversation around having 6 hens, online research shows that for a family of 4, your average family of 4, between 4 and 6 hens, depending on the breed, is more than sufficient to provide eggs for them. So that is kind of where we settled at on 6 for your average family of 4. There was debate to try to follow Kansas City's ruling of 15. I will be the first to say that we are not Kansas City. So we thought going from 0 chickens legally or illegally to 6 chickens legally was a really good compromise for everybody. And I don't know if that answered all of your questions, but that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Thank you. Other comments?
I do have a question. In younger years, growing up in Kansas, spent time hunting pheasant and quail. They fly. Don't chickens fly?
Domesticated ducks don't fly either, or ducks don't fly.
They're not getting over a 6-foot fence.
3-foot chain link fence between yards. I'd be concerned about the chickens then getting into somebody else's yard if it was a chain link fence. Again, I didn't know. That's why I asked the question.
Thank you. Other comments?
As far as like even if chickens own the yard, if your yard's properly fenced, whether you have a 6-foot fence, keep with a goose, whatever, would it kind of fall on the same lines like if you had dogs, you have a 3-foot chain link fence, and you have a jumper, you have a border collie that can go, I think, at a heartbeat. Wouldn't you still be kind of the same responsibility to contain your chickens as you contain your dog on a daily basis?
Mayor?
Yep.
Mayor?
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, we'd ask people to step to the podium if they're going to be recognized to speak so we can keep minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just have one more thing to add to, online research suggests that, each hen requires approximately 10 square feet per hen. And that is on the more generous side of the square footage that, I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name, but I believe he said 2 to 3 square feet. So the 10 square feet is on the more generous side that we've suggested tonight in the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you. Austin, you've done great work, and I bet wherever you learned public administration, you never thought you'd learn about bees and chickens, but maybe you could write a course. The thing is here that we, I love honey and I love everything chickens, that's all I know, okay? So, what we're trying to do is provide an avenue for people to do what they have a passion to do, okay? So if we're going to do that, it seems like we should do it in a manner that works. The three issues that have come up that I think make sense, are the number, especially if chicks are counted. It's the, keeping them cooped up, and it's, I have three issues. Restraining the coop on ducks, ducks, because I didn't know what a drake was, and that seems logical to me also. So, if those are the three issues, and I think knowing that probably 15 or 16, whatever Kansas City is a non-starter for us. I don't know what that magic number is, but if there is a magic number for making it doable, workable, so that they're successful, that's maybe more than 6, then I'd be interested to know what that is. As Mayor Pro Tem Moore said, I'm not sure what that means for what we do this evening, if we want to do nothing or if we want to just place it on its first reading and do some more research. But we have people with real-life experience telling us that what we're proposing just might not quite be good enough for them to be successful.
Thank you.
Mayor? Now, I'd like to table the discussion and get a little bit more research done to allow us to possibly increase the number of hens and look at ducks, the possibility of ducks and the free-range issue and all. I think that the comments that we've heard tonight have been educated comments, not necessarily emotional comments. There are some, but you all have brought up some very important pieces of information for us that have definitely opened our eyes to this, and I don't think it would be appropriate tonight to take action on this bill.
Thank you.
Mayor? Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Should I go ahead? I would just like to echo the comments that Mr. Greer made to say that this is what government is about, and it's about people participating in their government. So we are really pleased to have you in attendance, and everybody's been very calm and very educated in their comments, and we do appreciate that. It makes a difference.
Mr. City Manager?
Mayor, thank you. If the council is interested in tabling the action as council members follow suggested, it would have to be to a date certain, and from the staff's perspective, late February might be a decent time frame to give us time to research and redraft and get input. So your second meeting in February is the 27th. Your first meeting in March is the 13th. Just if that's helpful.
Thank you. Would there be any benefit to referring these specific issues that were raised this evening back to the Planning Commission for consideration, or just to do staff and let us decide? I mean, I'm asking City Council here. We could refer those specific issues back to Planning Commission for discussion and recommendation, or we could just let staff make recommendations to us and we decide at that point.
Mayor, I have a crazy idea.
Okay.
How about we, some way, shape, or form, get these folks to come back and visit with staff and perhaps the liaison from the council, and so that we can learn and hear some of those things that they were discussing that we aren't going to have record of because they weren't at the microphone. I don't know if you all would be willing to come to City Hall some evening and participate for an hour, but that'd be a real eye-opener. Not that, I'm sorry, Austin, to put you on the spot for having another evening meeting, but Mayor Pro Tem Moore is right. This is kind of cool. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And these folks know what they're talking about, real life experience. We could do that. As far as, I don't know if we're going to make drastic, maybe it's more of a technical question, if it needs to be remanded to the Planning Commission or not, I think would be City Manager.
Well, I think certainly if you're making sweeping changes to the ordinance that's before you, I think it's fair to send it back to the Planning Commission for additional discussion. That will require advertising and notice and all those sorts of things that we do at the Planning Commission, so it'll extend the time frame, but I think that's maybe the best way to go.
Okay. Any other comments? I was going to say, I was sensitive to the same issues. If maybe we not only look at the numbers, but defining laying hens versus how or whether we count chicks. I think that's a legitimate issue, even if we keep it at 6. If it doesn't include, chicks as toward the count, I think that's worthy of consideration. When I was reading about the coop size, I was also very surprised at 80 square feet and 100 square feet for that many. I think it makes sense to allow them to roam within an enclosed yard. If there is restrictions on the size of the actual physical coop they're in, just like we have them on sheds or anything else, I think I'd be interested in that, but I don't know the benefit of restricting them to that small of an area. That's as big as this conference table, or this, the dais here. If you had a perfectly good fenced yard that you'd like to have them run around in. So I think that would be worthy for consideration. And then the issue of ducks, which I don't know that it has come up before. But we have wanted to make it clear from the very beginning, our effort here was to try to facilitate this. We have never been anti-bee or anti-raising chickens. We've been wanting to try to figure out a way to facilitate this on under 3 acres, which is all our ordinances have allowed, and not a lot of folks in Gladstone have 3 acres. So we're trying to support and facilitate both the beekeeping and the raising of the hens, and I don't know that anybody's pro more regulations, for those, but that's how we can facilitate this and have something to help us when we do have folks that aren't responsible chicken raisers or beekeepers, of which I was surprised to find out that we actually have some. Also in the interest of full disclosure, my nephew has chickens, and my mother knits hats and scarves for them. And I can bring you pictures of those if you'd like to see it.
I would, sure would.
I was hoping I was going to keep that quiet, but I feel like I've got to fess up to that. Can we then just fail to take up the next amendment, or do we need to pass a first reading?
No.
I don't even know if we want to do a first reading if we've got substantive issues yet to be resolved.
I would just recommend that you postpone any action on the ordinance that's on the agenda tonight.
Okay. To a date certain, or just postpone it?
It doesn't need to be to a date certain, just a future meeting after you've received the input from the public and staff, and Planning Commission perhaps.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, if there are no more other comments, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Is that right? And we'll move on with item 12, the first reading of Bill number 22-40, an ordinance amending Chapter 105 Animal Regulations in Title II, Public Health, Safety, and Welfare in the Gladstone City Code relating to residential hens and bees. Councilman Malams?
Mayor Garnitz, I'd like to request then that we postpone any further movement on this proposed bill until a later date.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Those in favor of postponing consideration of bill number 22-40, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We'll revisit. We'll move on to item 13. Is there any other business for City Council this evening? Hearing none, we will reconvene our next regular meeting in 2 weeks on December 12th. We are adjourned.